Johnny Tomorrow. Imagine that you are coming on a journey into the future. We are going to a world millions and millions of miles away to meet Johnny, the first child to be born on another planet. We will travel far beyond Mars, glowing red in the ink-black night of space, far beyond Saturn with its mysterious spinning rings, out beyond our own solar system. We will pass by a billion stars and planets which throng the galaxy of the Milky Way before we reach Johnny's home, the planet Utopium. Today, this trip would take many thousands of years, even traveling at nearly 186,000 miles per second, which is the speed of light. But in years to come, scientists may well discover a quicker way of getting there, perhaps through the black holes in space. Let us suppose that these black holes are giant slipways to distant areas of space beyond our reach. Our spaceship has entered a black hole and taken a sudden time-space leap into another solar system, and we are speeding towards Utopium. The year is 2050 AD. What is life like for a boy who lives so far in the future, on a planet so distant from Earth? Look out from the spaceship. You can see Utopium brilliantly lit by its own sun. It is pockmarked by craters and crusted with jagged mountain ranges. We draw closer and closer and search the surface for something familiar. But there are no seas, no polar ice caps, no tropical forests or lush grasslands. We are plunging towards an alien land of dry, reddish-brown rock. Our spaceship comes to rest safely on a soft bed of powdery dust. We long to step out and explore this strange new world, but take care. On Utopium, there is no air. First, climb into your pressure suit and attach your space helmet securely. Check your air tanks to be sure you can breathe. Now you can step out. Tread carefully, for the pull of gravity is very weak. It is difficult to walk when you're almost weightless. A fall at this stage could cause a fatal tear in your spacesuit. There is Johnny's house. You can see Johnny outside with his father. He is never allowed out alone. One jump will take him right over his house. A few more could take him away over the horizon, lost from sight. Since the outside world is so dangerous, Johnny's parents have tried to make sure that he has everything he could possibly want indoors. Let's take a look inside and see how Johnny spends his day. This morning, Johnny woke early. He hung in his sleeping bag, swinging lazily to and fro in midair. "Come on, Johnny. Out of that bag and into the gym," called his father. "Oh, must I?" came the muffled reply. Johnny snuggled deeper into his bag. His father started on the usual argument. "Look, Johnny, if you ever want to build up enough strength, you must exercise. Otherwise, when you visit other planets with stronger gravity, you'll be as helpless as a baby." Johnny reluctantly pulled on his friction boots. They had special soles which gripped the walls of his room. He shuffled up, over the ceiling, and into the gym. 20 minutes on his trapeze, wrestling with anti-gravity forces, soon had him wide awake. Johnny chose his favorite breakfast of butterscotch vegetable protein. He sucked it from its plastic bag while deciding what toy he would make today. A robot, perhaps, or a space shuttle? The Atomator, his toy-making machine, could make anything he liked. It was filled with billions of atoms, which it put together in different ways to make different toys. "I know. I'll make a mini space buggy," he decided. First, he twisted a dial, and out slid a thin plastic sheet. He molded it into shape by feeding measurements into a calculator. Lastly, he slotted in a tiny power pack. In fact, it was more fun making the buggy than playing with it. He soon dropped it back into the atomator to be broken down into atoms again. Johnny lay back against the wall and wondered what to do next. "Pongo," he called softly. There was a snuffling noise, and then a big orange furry ball flung itself at him. It was Johnny's ongaroo, a pet specially bred for him. "Steady on, Pongo," Johnny laughed as they spun round the room. He kicked a boot off. "Fetch, Pongo." The ongaroo obediently brought it back. "Sleep, Pongo," commanded Johnny. Pongo rolled himself back into a ball and floated to the ceiling. "Poor old Pongo. I wish you would do something naughty just for once in your life," Johnny sighed. Johnny climbed into his sonograph to play some music. "Boom, boom, 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 boom," he started with a rattle of kettle drums. The sonograph could make any music in the universe. It could imitate all the instruments that had ever been invented. It would hum and twang and throb with strange, exciting sounds all of its own. Johnny only had to let his mind go blank and his feelings take over, and the sonograph would put his mood into music. The sonograph played a sad, lonely little tune. Johnny pressed the record button. "I'll play that back after school." Johnny's school was his room. He had a teacher all to himself, not a human teacher, but a computer called PAL, short for Programmed Active Learning. When school time arrived, there was a low humming sound as PAL came into action. What do you want to study today, Johnny?" asked PAL, his electronic voice sounding as if he had a slight cold. How about a prehistory lesson?" Johnny suggested. "Prehistory it is," PAL answered. The room instantly lit up with omnisense laser beams. Above, Johnny could see a clear blue earth sky. Mountains towered in the distance. He waited impatiently. "Come on, pal. How about some dinosaurs?" "Dinosaurs coming up," Pal replied. The ground shook, and the air rang with a spine-chilling roar. A Gorgosaurus charged towards Johnny, chased by a ferocious Tyrannosaurus Rex. The Tyrannosaurus bared its teeth and snarled at Johnny. Johnny just laughed. "All right, pal, you can't scare me." Johnny knew that however real omnisense might look, sound, even taste and smell, nothing could actually hurt him. If he stretched out a hand, it would simply go through the dinosaur. In omniscience lessons like this, Johnny had visited places we learn about from pictures and maps in geography lessons. He had met the people we read about in history books. In maths lessons, he had programmed spaceships to explore the universe, and Pal had taken him on imaginary trips to distant planets. Yet Johnny longed, above all, to go on a real journey, to meet real people, especially children of his own age. Sooner than he expected, Johnny's wish was to come true. In a way, it was Pal's fault. Although Pal was extremely clever for a computer, he was no match for an inquisitive and adventurous boy. It all happened when Johnny's parents were called away on an important space conference. Johnny's father instructed Pal to take care of Johnny and on no account to let him out of the house. The evening after Johnny's parents left, Pal and Johnny were having a game of three-dimensional marbles. Pal noticed that Johnny was unusually quiet. What's the matter, Johnny?" Johnny swung round, turning his back on Pal. "I don't want to play any more. It's boring," he announced. "How about some other game, then?" Pal suggested. "Oh, they're all boring," replied Johnny. "You know why? It's because you can always win. When I win, it's only because you let me." "What do you want to do, then?" asked Pal. "Well, I'd like to go outside, explore a little, meet some real people for once." "You know that is forbidden, Johnny. I can simulate any place or person you want." "Oh, it's not the same," Johnny insisted. He climbed into the sonograph to have a long private think. Both were silent for a while. Pal flipped through his memory bank, trying to find an answer to this unusual problem. Then Johnny had an idea. Pal, how about giving me a lesson in computer technology? Pal, who was instructed to teach Johnny anything he wanted to know, innocently set about telling him how he worked. After a few hours, Johnny had all the information he needed. By midnight, he had completely reprogrammed Pal. Johnny stood back. The computer was silent. A single light flickered reproachfully on his control panel. Sorry, Pal, Johnny said. And then he comforted himself. After all, Pal is only a computer. He has no real feelings to hurt. Johnny slipped into his spacesuit. Open the doors, Pal, he commanded. Pal instantly obeyed his new master. Taking his father's space buggy, Johnny set out on a journey of discovery. Utopium was small. From his house, Johnny could only see a mile or so in each direction before the horizon dipped away. A few minutes' drive took Johnny out of view of the house and into unknown territory. How still it is. How silent. How lonely, thought Johnny. A shiver of excitement ran down his spine. It was difficult to judge distances with no familiar landmarks to go by. The starlight played tricks on his eyes. Distant mountains looked as close as nearby rocks. Now keep steady and watch out, Johnny told himself, straining ahead into the darkness. Suddenly a boulder, which had seemed a long way off, loomed up in front of him. He swerved to avoid it. The buggy jolted forward and started to fall down, 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 down. I'm in an anti-gravity tunnel, Johnny realized, trying not to panic. Sooner or later, it will lead me back to the surface. But where? He could feel the pull on the buggy as it was caught in a strong anti-gravity current. The speedometer registered 100, 200, 300 miles an hour. The buggy seemed to have a mind of its own. At one moment, it would head straight for a blank wall and suddenly swerve aside and bolt down yet another tunnel. Johnny was drawn helplessly on around the central core of Utopium and beyond. He ceased to care where he was going as he enjoyed the sensation of effortless speed. Then, without warning, the buggy was flung out onto the surface again. It came to a halt in brilliant sunshine. Johnny climbed out, rubbing his eyes. It's daytime, he said to himself. I must have arrived on the other side of Utopium. He was inside a giant air dome. It was more than 50 miles across and filled with mountains carved into incredible shapes. Not far off, he saw a man on a hover buggy hard at work with a laser tool. As the laser beam struck the mountain, great hunks of rock split away with thunderous crashes. Johnny drove his buggy over to the man. "What are you doing?" he shouted. "I'm carving the mountains," the man replied. "What for?" Johnny asked. The man brought his hover buggy to rest beside Johnny. "We're going to turn Utopium into the most fantastic planet in the universe," he explained. "In 10 years' time, every inch of it will be landscaped like this. The lower hills will be turned into anti-gravity ski slopes. Higher up, we'll carve giant speedways for mountain buggy races. Whole air domes will be filled with sonosound so that people can hear music while they enjoy themselves. Utopium will be a giant pleasure park. You're lucky. Children on Earth would give anything to live here." "Do you really think so?" Johnny asked. "Go and ask them," replied the artist, and with a friendly wave, he returned to his work. If only I could go to Earth, thought Johnny, as he drove off and plunged once more into the darkness of an anti-gravity tunnel. It was not long before Johnny shot out into another air dome. He could hardly believe his eyes. Animals of strange shapes and colors crowded round the buggy. He climbed out. Surely pigs aren't supposed to be as big as that, Johnny thought. He stroked the soft muzzle of a two-headed cow. There were sheep with wool so thick they could hardly stand beneath the weight of it. A huge gorilla ambled past him, walking on its hind legs. "What do you think of my animals?" The voice startled Johnny. A man was watching him from a bench laden with scientific instruments. Well, they're different from Earth animals, Johnny said. One of his favourite lessons with Pal had been Earth zoology. They're better, said the man proudly. I made them. How? Johnny asked. Well, I take the best genes from different animals, I mix them together and put them in an incubator. Then out comes a new, improved animal. My cows produce 4 times as much milk as an Earth cow. My gorillas are intelligent enough to do many manual jobs a man would normally do. You haven't got an animal that can talk and play games, have you? Asked Johnny hopefully. No, it'll be some years before I've developed the apes to the stage of speech, I'm afraid, replied the man. I don't think I can wait that long, Johnny said thoughtfully. He climbed back into the buggy and accelerated away into the anti-gravity tunnel. Underground once again, Johnny let the buggy drift through the maze of tunnels. Suddenly, it started to surge forward as if someone else had taken control of it. He was swept into a vast underground highway. The buggy hurtled down towards a gateway which bore the words Utopium Control Center, top secret. The gate swung open and the buggy came to a halt inside. Someone leant down and helped Johnny out. Hello, Johnny, he said. I'm Professor Sappho. Our systems reported that your computer had malfunctioned. I've been expecting you. But how did you know? Johnny started to ask. I made PAL. I control it. You'll be glad to hear that PAL has been restored to working order. You may return home now. But I don't want to go home, Johnny protested. I want to go to Earth. Earth? Exclaimed Professor Sappho. Why in space should you want to go to Earth? Haven't you got everything you want here? Perhaps you don't realize how lucky you are, Johnny. Your education is far in advance of an Earth child's. You're the first person to be born on Utopium, the first of a new race of human beings who will grow up to inherit the universe. Soon you'll look upon Earth people as we look upon the apes, as a lower form of life. Well, that's just it, cried Johnny. I want to be an ordinary boy. I want to meet real Earth people, make friends. The professor's expression changed. Something in his eyes frightened Johnny. Come here, child. I'm going to return you to your home. He made a grab for Johnny, but he was not quick enough. Johnny leapt into the buggy. Before Professor Sappho could operate the gates, he'd escaped back into the anti-gravity tunnel. Johnny knew the space base was situated near the north pole of the planet. He switched the buggy onto a northern course and set it at full speed. After a journey that seemed to take hours, the welcome neon sign flashed up before him. Utopium Space Base. A thrill of excitement ran through Johnny as he caught his first glimpse of the waiting space shuttles. He was eagerly making his way to the viewing area when he was grasped from behind. He swung round to find an astronaut dressed in a gleaming spacesuit smiling down at him. Johnny had only one thought in his head. I want to go to Earth, he said simply. There are plenty of omnisensors that can give you a perfect simulation, replied the astronaut. No, I really want to go there, Johnny repeated. Suddenly he felt as if he would choke if he didn't get someone to understand. All in a rush, he told the astronaut about his life. How he had never met anyone his own age, never done any of the things ordinary boys were allowed to do. The astronaut looked serious. You're Johnny, aren't you? I've heard about you. My name's Astrum. He held out his hand. Johnny shook it silently. Now look, Johnny, Astrum said. I'm not meant to do this, but I'm going on a 2-day supply trip to Earth. If you promise to do exactly as I say, I'll take you with me. Earth, thought Johnny. His greatest dream was about to come true. The 5-hour journey seemed to pass in a flash. The gravity on Utopium was so light that Johnny felt practically no pressure on takeoff. He'd been excited and a little nervous at the thought of making the time-space jump as they passed through the black hole slipway. But when it happened, apart from some rapid adjustments on the control dials, he would never have known it had taken place. Now, in Earth space-time, they were fast approaching the brightly sunlit planet. Johnny could not take his eyes from the visiplate. The colors were dazzling. From the pale gold aurora on the horizon, soft banks of lilac cloud gave way to vivid green and terracotta land masses separated by deep blue oceans. After the bleak landscape of Utopium, Earth appeared to be seething with life. Johnny felt himself plunging faster and faster towards the planet. Just as it seemed as if they must dive straight through the surface, he felt the braking force of the decelerating engines. Astrim was talking to ground control. His voice sounded reassuringly calm. The pressure of deceleration became almost unbearable. Johnny closed his eyes. Then, all of a sudden, there was a gentle bump. The space shuttle's engines died down. Astrim turned to Johnny and said, "Welcome to Earth." So Johnny, the first child ever to be born on another planet, arrived on our planet, the planet of his forefathers. Johnny's body felt heavy and stiff in the stronger Earth gravity. As they emerged from the space shuttle, he automatically put on his space helmet. Astrim laughed. "You won't need that here." Johnny looked up, straight into the clear blue sky. There was no air dome above him. He tentatively took his first breath of Earth air. He could breathe, out in the open. Johnny followed Astrim towards the reception area. Every step was a tremendous effort. He was glad of all the exercises he'd done in the gym. As they entered the reception building, a boy about Johnny's age came running towards them. "Dad, did you remember to bring me some Utopium rocks?" "I brought you something even better," said Astrim. "Tim, meet Johnny, Utopium's first man." Johnny stared at Tim, too shy to say anything. Tim grinned at him with obvious admiration. "Do you really live on Utopium?" he asked. "Come on," said Astrim. "Let's get something to eat. I'm starving." Well, Johnny realized that he was too. It was over 12 hours since he'd eaten. Soon they were seated at a table. Astrim ordered fruit juice. When the drinks arrived, Johnny was amazed to see that they were in open beakers. He hurriedly covered his beaker with his hand in case the juice should float out. Tim watched with interest. "Go on, drink it," he said. "It won't fly away." It didn't, and neither did the fresh earth food which followed. It was the best meal Johnny had ever tasted. While they were eating, Tim kept up a constant stream of questions about Utopium. Johnny felt his shyness melt away as he answered. "Quite ordinary things, like being able to sleep on the ceiling amazed Tim." When they'd finished their meal, Astrim said, "Johnny's only got 2 days here. How about taking the hover car and showing him some of the countryside?" Johnny felt much stronger now that he'd eaten. Astrim watched him walk and said, "Good. I can see you getting your earth legs. Don't let Tim wear you out, though." By the time the boys reached the hover car, Johnny was glad to be able to sink down in the comfortable seat. Astrim's hover car was one of the latest models. It cruised at a speed of 200 miles per hour. They soon left the space base far behind. Tim slowed down. Leaving the multi-track hoverway, they headed out across open fields. The long summer grass swished aside as they floated over it. The lush greenness and fresh country smells filled Johnny with a sense of well-being. They reached a wooded hillside. They could hear the wind in the trees. The wood looked cool and inviting. "Please, can we stop for a moment?" Johnny asked. The boys climbed out of the hover car. The grass brushed against Johnny's legs. He started as a grasshopper jumped out in front of him. The two boys clambered up the hill. Johnny's heart pounded in his chest from the effort. He bruised his ankles on the rough tree trunks, but he didn't care. This was far more fun than Powell's simulated outings. They reached a clearing. A stream came gushing down into a rock pool. Tim plunged his hands in and splashed his face. "Be careful, you're wasting it," said Johnny anxiously. "Wasting it? What do you mean?" asked Tim. Johnny knelt down and let the cool water flow over his hands. "On Utopium, water is one of the most valuable things we have. We need to save every drop." Dark clouds were gathering overhead. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Tim and Johnny hurried back through the wood. Johnny was surprised to find how much easier it was to travel downhill than up. As they reached the valley, the first drops of rain started to fall. "Water!" Johnny shouted. "Look, Tim, water falling from the sky." Tim laughed. "It's only rain." Johnny ran out into the open. He let the rain soak his hair, run down his face. He opened his mouth and drank it as it fell. By the time they reached the hover car, he was drenched to the skin. "Come on," said Tim. "I'll take you home for a hot bath." Back at Tim's house, Johnny was soon enjoying his first ever bath. On Utopium, washing had consisted of a quick rub down with chemical cleanser. The novelty of so much hot water and bubbly soap kept Johnny busy for over an hour. Tim's house seemed vast to Johnny. He couldn't get over the square rooms, the way the furniture stayed firmly on the floor, how it was possible to open the windows and let the air in. After Tim had shown him round, Astrom called them downstairs to his study. "Oh, I've managed to contact your parents, Johnny," he said. "I've explained what has happened. They're on the visiphone waiting to talk to you." Johnny was caught between happiness at seeing his parents again and worry about what they would say. In full colour on the visiphone, they looked as if they were in the room instead of hundreds of thousands of light years away. "Hello," said Johnny. "Please don't be angry with me." "Hello, Johnny," his father replied. "I'm not angry, but we've been very worried ever since Professor Sappho notified us that Pal had malfunctioned." "Pal didn't malfunction," Johnny cut in. "I reprogrammed him to open the doors. I had to find out what life was like on Earth. Now I know I never want to return to Utopium." "Johnny," his father said gently, "you've got to face facts. Earth can no longer support the human race. The natural resources are running out and the population is still growing. You are the first space child. If you fail to adapt, the human race may well be doomed." Deep down, Johnny knew that what his father said was true. "If only there was someone, another boy like Tim on Utopium," he said miserably. "Please," Tim broke in, "let me come to Utopium. I want to more than anything in the universe." Johnny's father looked at Astrom. "What do you say?" he asked. After a lot of discussion between the grown-ups, it was agreed that Tim should spend 6 months of each Earth year on the planet Utopium with Johnny, and that Johnny should spend the remaining 6 months of the year on the planet Earth. It took some time to get official clearance for Tim's move to Utopium. Most of it was spent taking Johnny to see all the famous sights on Earth. Hypersonic ferries meant that Johnny was able to see the Tower of London, the Colosseum in Rome, the Acropolis in Athens, the pyramids, and even the Taj Mahal, all now air-sealed in a thick coat of plasticine, in the matter of a few days. But however impressive these historic sights might be, Johnny found none of them compared with the thrill of feeling rain, wet and cold and real, on his skin, or the force of the wind blowing hard against him with the millions and millions of strange new sounds it brought with it. Nothing compared with the fantastic variety of colours he could see in the grassy meadow or the scent of a single rose. To Johnny, it was as if he was seeing and hearing and feeling for the very first time in his life. He loved the planet Earth and everything about it. At last, however, permission came, and it was time to return to Utopium. During the drive to the space base, Johnny gazed miserably through the hovercar window. It would be 6 whole Earth months before he would see the green fields of Earth again. But Tim could barely keep still from excitement, and excitement is catching. So by the time they were strapped into position in the space shuttle and listening to the ground control checks prior to liftoff, he cheered up a lot. Space travel was always a thrill. It was a standard freight-carrying shuttle taking supplies to Utopium. Astrim was at the controls, and the two boys were the only passengers. As the countdown came down through the hundreds, Astrim looked over his shoulder and warned the boys that the liftoff was likely to be pretty uncomfortable, as the shuttle had to escape from the strong Earth gravity. The space shuttle's engines thundered, and then it literally seemed to leap into the sky. The pressure thrust Tim and Johnny painfully back into their seats. Johnny felt as if there was a tremendous weight on his chest, forcing him backwards, and for a moment everything went black. When Johnny opened his eyes, he saw Tim beside him, looking equally sick and dizzy, but he grinned at Johnny to show that he was enjoying himself all the same. Astrim looked over his shoulder. "Okay, we're leaving Earth gravity any minute now. Just take a few gulps of oxygen from the seat masks and you'll soon feel better." The oxygen sent a wonderful, cool, clean feeling through Johnny's body, and he instantly felt better. Tim was already undoing his safety harness. Tim pointed to the visiplate. "Look, Johnny, isn't it great? Look at Earth. That's Britain down there, looking just like it does on a map." It was evening in Britain, and Tim could see the great shadow of night sweeping over the country. His mother would be closing the windows, drawing the curtains, putting on the lights. But he didn't feel homesick. This was far too much fun. In a matter of an hour, the Earth had shrunk to the size of a ping-pong ball on the visiplate, and Astrim started to point out other planets. They got a superb view of Saturn, its fantastic fiery rings spitting colors into the sky as if it were putting on a private firework display just for them. They were dead on schedule to a fraction of a second. Astrim was humming to himself as his experienced eye constantly scanned the control panel. Johnny was just about to ask Astrim if he'd be allowed to take the controls for a while when suddenly the shrill emergency bell rang out through the shuttle. Tim and Johnny dived for their seats and had their safety harnesses strapped within seconds. A glance at the visiplate showed Johnny that they were heading straight for a dense meteorite cloud. Astrim swiftly swerved the space shuttle, and the three of them were flung forcibly sideways. Then Johnny heard the sound that he'd been dreading, the scream of metal that meant impact. It seemed as if all the blood in his body had turned to ice. If the shuttle's coating had been punctured, Johnny knew that they now had only seconds left to live. The shuttle would simply disintegrate. He waited with his eyes closed. A second passed. Nothing happened. Another second passed. It seemed like an hour. And then another. There was no change in the sound of the engines. The shuttle was moving steadily. Johnny opened his eyes and gazed at the visiplate. Their path was clear. Somehow they had survived. It was only then that Johnny realized that Tim was shouting, "Dad! Dad!" He was struggling to undo his safety harness, and Astrim was slumped in a strange position over the controls. Johnny undid his own harness in a flash and leapt to the panel, switching it on to automatic pilot. Then he turned to Astrim. He felt his pulse. To his relief, there was a steady throbbing. "It's all right, Tim. He's only unconscious. He must have hit his head when we swerved. He didn't have time to strap in." Johnny gently removed the radio phones from Astrim's head. He had a nasty gash on the left side. He must have hit it pretty hard. The radio phones were blaring. "Ground control to shuttle 707. Astrim, can you hear me? Over." "Ground control calling 707. Astrim, reply please. Over." Johnny fitted on the radio phones and replied, "Shuttle 707 to ground control. Johnny from Utopium here. Listen, we've encountered a meteorite cluster and had to swerve. Astrim is unconscious. I'm going to have to take over." In reply, Johnny heard a muffled voice back from Earth. "Glad to hear your voice, Johnny. Do you think you can handle the situation?" Johnny cleared his throat and glanced at Tim, who was pale and shaky. "Shuttle 707 to ground control. I can handle it. I've switched to automatic. And once we've got Astrim comfortable, I'm going to see if I can get this shuttle back on course." Very gently, the two boys lifted the unconscious man away from the controls and strapped him into a sleeping harness. Johnny left Tim to apply a plaster and give Astrim some extra oxygen and returned to the controls. He systematically checked the panel. Navigation system, okay. Sonar, okay. Temperature level, pressure. Johnny's heart gave a jolt. He stared at the needle in horror. It was just hovering on the edge of the red danger zone. So there had been a puncture. Johnny spoke quietly into the speaker so as not to alarm Tim. Shuttle 707 to ground control. Reporting pressure unstable. Either the dial is malfunctioning or the meteorite impact has caused some damage. Ground control came back immediately. You're going to have to get out there and put a repair patch on, Johnny. For a few minutes, Johnny worked the control board like a robot. Instructions came in from ground control as fast as his fingers could obey them. After a tremendous reverse thrust, he brought the shuttle into a stable position. They were literally hanging in space. There was no time to lose. Johnny reached for his spacesuit. What's happening, Johnny? Asked Tim. Oh, I'm going to have to go outside and fix a repair patch, he said, trying to sound confident. Have you ever done anything like that before? Asked Tim. Oh, hundreds of times, said Johnny. At least simulations, and that's just the same thing. He wished it were true. Johnny took a last look at the control panel. The pressure was still sinking. He fixed on his helmet, checked his air tanks, picked up the repair kit, and headed for the airlock. The first hatch cover opened automatically. Johnny climbed into the narrow airlock tunnel and waited for it to close behind him. He just had time to give Tim a reassuring grin before it closed. Once inside the tunnel, he attached his lifeline securely and waited for the pressure to neutralize. At last, the second hatch began to swing open. Johnny looked out. Now there was nothing but the thin plate of his space helmet between him and the vastness of space itself. Above and below and all around him, 1,000,000 billion stars, suns and planets, moons and asteroids floated in the lonely ink-black night of infinity. It was so black, it seemed almost solid. It was so silent that the sound of his own breathing seemed deafening. He heaved himself gently out of the tunnel, not too fast, or he would send himself hurtling out to the end of his lifeline. And if that should snap, he would go on and on until the air ran out in his air tanks, and still on and on forever, and ever falling through space. But once you start falling, there is no way in which you can ever stop yourself. It was a chilling thought. For a moment, the terror got a grip on him. He couldn't move. And then Tim's voice rang in his ears. Hey, Johnny, you out there yet? Johnny had forgotten that his radio contact with the shuttle meant that he could keep in touch with Tim. Nearly, he answered. It certainly was reassuring to hear Tim's voice. He started to feel his way carefully along the side of the shuttle. He found the tiny impact dent in a matter of minutes. He slapped on a repair patch and waited for it to weld into place. Then he radioed back to Tim. Give me a pressure reading, Tim. Tim read out the figures. There was not much improvement. Then Tim shouted, Hey, Johnny, the needle started to move. Which way? Asked Johnny tensely. Back from the red, into the white again. Johnny said softly, We've done it. Tim, we've done it. We've done it, he shouted to the stars, into space, to anyone and everyone, everywhere. They couldn't hear him, but he didn't care. We've done it. Johnny didn't remember much of how he got back into the shuttle, or even of the journey from there on to Utopium. Everything went very smoothly. Earth ground control guided them all the way to the space-time slipway, and once through it, they instantly made contact with Utopium ground control. Then Johnny recognized the director's voice. Utopium ground control to shuttle 707. Astrim, where the hell have you been? Shuttle 707 to ground control, replied Johnny. Sorry, sir, we had a spot of bother. Astrim's unconscious, but I don't think he's badly hurt. We had to handle the shuttle ourselves. Well, I'll be, said the voice. This was followed by a mighty chuckle. Then Johnny's father's voice came over the radio. Hey, Johnny, do you think you can manage the touchdown? We could send someone up to you, you know. You just try. We wouldn't let him in, would we, Tim? We certainly wouldn't, said Tim. It was a perfect touchdown. It hardly caused a flurry in the Utopium dust. And once inside the space-based dome, Astrim came round and the boys were given a hero's welcome. That night, back in his own room, swinging gently in his sleeping bag and listening to the steady sound of Tim's breathing from the bag beside him, Johnny came to the conclusion that maybe Utopium wasn't such a bad place to live in after all. "Pongo," he whispered, and the little Ongaroo came and snuggled into the bag beside him. Yes, he really only had one problem left. He looked at Pal's blank dials. Would Pal ever forgive him for the way he'd been tricked? Johnny tossed uncomfortably in his bag. All the good times that he had had with Pal came flooding back into his mind. The dinosaur battles, the time Pal had simulated that chat with Einstein, in which Johnny had explained the concept of faster-than-light flight. At last, he could bear it no longer. He slipped out of his bag and tiptoed across the ceiling to the computer. He pressed the switch. Pal's alert light came on to show that he was functioning. "So, you're back then," said Pal. "Yes," replied Johnny. "Have a good time?" asked Pal. "Wonderful," said Johnny. "Tell me, just as a matter of interest, how does Earth compare with my simulations?" "Well, it's kind of the same," said Johnny, trying to be tactful. "It's just that it's all so much better when it's real." Pal was silent for a moment. Johnny took the opportunity to say, "Look, Pal, you've got every right to hate me for what I did. I wouldn't blame you. Can you ever forgive me for tricking you?" "Hate you?" said Pal. "How can I hate you? I'm only a computer. I have no feelings. I can simulate feelings in my voice, but I can't actually feel anything. You can't hurt my feelings because I haven't any." "But you have," insisted Johnny. "I know you have. Why, I bet you feel more than half the human beings I've met." "Do you really think so?" asked Pal. "I do," insisted Johnny. Pal's light flickered, and he said in a strange, hush sort of voice, "What's it like to feel happy, Johnny?" "Well, it's a kind of warm, peaceful feeling. A feeling that everything is right and you're just, well, happy." "Johnny," said Pal, "do you know something? I think I just felt like that. I did. I know I did. Do you know that you've made the first computer in all history feel happy?" "You know, Pal, out of all my adventures, I reckon that's the very best thing that has happened. I've got a kind of feeling, though, that this is only the beginning and not the end of an adventure. From now on, I'm really going to enjoy living on Utopium." Pal said nothing. There was nothing more to say. Man's great adventure of colonizing space had really begun.